There is a comfortable story we tell ourselves about this planet, that every mountain has been mapped, every rock dated, every strange shape on Earth filed neatly into a textbook and explained. But the truth is stranger than that. Scattered across the deserts, the ocean floors, the frozen poles, and the deep jungles are places that refuse to fit the story. Formations too perfect to be random, colors that should not exist in stone, structures so precise that geologists and physicists still argue about how they came to be. Some of these places have partial answers, others have none at all. Today we count down 15 of the most baffling geological wonders on the planet. From a red waterfall bleeding out of an Antarctic glacier to a cave of crystals so enormous a person is dwarfed beneath a single beam, to a mountain 2 billion years old that floats in the clouds. We begin at number 15, and we end with the one place that comes closest to being a world of its own. Let us begin. Number 15. The Eye of the Sahara, Mauritania. In the Western Sahara, in Mauritania, there is a formation so large it was invisible to the people living beside it for centuries. From the ground, it looks like low ridges of rock and sand, but from orbit, the desert opens into an enormous bullseye, a series of concentric rings nearly 25 miles across, staring up at the sky like a colossal eye. Astronauts were the first to truly see it. For years, the leading theory was a meteorite impact. But geologists found none of the shocked minerals or debris an impact always leaves behind. The rock is sedimentary and volcanic, laid down in patient layers, then lifted by a dome of molten rock and eroded into rings over hundreds of millions of years. The trouble is precision. Erosion is chaotic. It does not usually carve near-perfect circles nested inside one another, each made of alternating hard and soft bands of stone. That symmetry is what still unsettles researchers. Some of the volcanic rock at its center has been dated to nearly 100 million years ago. For most of human history, people walked across the Eye of the Sahara without ever knowing they stood inside one of the largest and strangest formations on Earth. A shape so vast and so perfect, it can only truly be seen from space. Number 14. The Giant's Causeway, Northern Ireland. On the northern coast of Northern Ireland, the land ends in a staircase that looks built by something with a plan. Roughly 40,000 columns of dark basalt rise from the sea, packed so tightly they form a continuous pavement. Most have 6 sides, fitting together with the precision of a honeycomb as they march down into the grey Atlantic. For centuries, people could not accept that nature had done this. Legend said a giant named Finn McCool built the causeway by hand, laying a road across the sea to reach a rival in Scotland. It is easy to laugh at the myth until you stand there, because the honest reaction of the human brain is that someone must have made them. Science does have an answer. Around 60 million years ago, molten lava flooded this land and cooled. As it contracted, it cracked into hexagonal columns, the same way drying mud splits into polygons. That much is understood. What is not fully understood is why the columns here are so extraordinarily uniform, when most cooling lava produces a messy jumble of shapes. The exact interplay of cooling rate, chemistry, and pressure that yields tens of thousands of near-perfect hexagons is still active physics research, only recreated cleanly in laboratories in recent years. Some columns rise nearly 40 feet. Stand among them, and you are surrounded by a structure that looks engineered, yet was built by nothing more than fire, time, and the strange mathematics of cooling stone. Number 13. The Moeraki Boulders, New Zealand. Along a beach called Causeway, on New Zealand's South Island, the sand is interrupted by something that stops every visitor. Scattered across the shore are enormous stone spheres. Some are small enough to sit on. Others are over 6 feet across and weigh several tons. They are almost perfectly round, half buried in the sand, as though a race of giants left their marbles behind. The instinct is that something made them. They are simply too spherical to feel natural. Yet these boulders formed over an almost unimaginable span of time. Geologists call them concretions, masses that grew outward as minerals slowly cemented sediment around a central core, the same process that forms a pearl inside an oyster, only on a scale of millions of years and several tons of solid rock. Here is the part that strains belief. The largest boulders took an estimated 4 to 5 million years to reach their size. They began forming roughly 60 million years ago in ancient marine mud, and were only exposed as the softer cliffs behind them eroded away. What researchers still debate is the exact mechanism behind their striking roundness and the strange network of cracks across their surfaces, because most concretions are lumpy and irregular, not near-perfect globes. The Maori who first lived here had their own answer. The boulders were food baskets and gourds washed ashore from a wrecked ancestral canoe. Watching the tide slide around these perfect stone spheres, the old story feels no less reasonable than the science. Number 12. Pamukkale, Turkey. In southwestern Turkey, a hillside appears frozen in a permanent cascade of snow-white ice, except the air is warm and it never melts. Terraces of gleaming white stone descend the slope in tiers, each holding a shallow pool of steaming turquoise water that spills into the terrace below. The locals named it Pamukkale, Cotton Castle. People have bathed here for more than 2,000 years. The white material is not ice or snow. It is travertine, a form of limestone, and it is being manufactured continuously by the water itself. Hot springs rise saturated with dissolved calcium carbonate. As the warm mineral water cools in the open air, the calcium hardens, coating everything in brilliant white stone and building the terraces higher, one microscopic layer at a time. The Romans and Greeks built an entire spa city here, called Hierapolis, convinced the waters held healing power. Its ruins still crown the terraces, and one ancient pool is now littered with fallen marble columns that visitors swim among in the warm water. Scientists understand the chemistry well. What they find remarkable is the scale and the self-organizing beauty. How flowing water naturally sculpts smooth, rimmed pools that look designed by an architect. The formation is also alive and fragile. Alter the flow of the springs, and it grays and crumbles. Pamukkale is a reminder that some of the Earth's most dazzling structures are not ancient and finished, but growing right now, laid down drop by drop. Number 11. The Fairy Circles. Namibia. In the grasslands of Namibia, there is a pattern in the earth so bizarre it has fueled scientific feuds for decades. Across hundreds of miles of arid plain, the red soil is dotted with millions of bare circles, each an empty patch of ground ringed by taller grass, surrounded on all sides by more circles. From the air, the land looks stippled, like the skin of an enormous animal. The circles range from about 6 feet to nearly 100 feet across, eerily regular in their spacing, as if something is deliberately keeping them apart. And they are alive. In a sense, a circle can appear, persist for decades, then vanish while a new one forms nearby. For as long as scientists have studied them, no one has fully agreed on the cause. Two camps have battled for years. One says sand termites create the circles by eating grass roots in a ring and hoarding rainwater beneath the bare patch. The other says the circles self-organize as plants compete for scarce water and space themselves into evenly distributed reservoirs. The unsettling truth is that both sides have strong evidence, and neither has won. Termites are found at some sites and not others. Mathematical models reproduce the patterns beautifully, yet cannot rule the insects out. How do you explain a pattern that covers a landscape, obeys mathematical spacing, breathes over decades, and still hides its cause from every scientist who comes looking? The Namibian people had an answer long before the debate began. The circles are the footprints of the gods. Number 10. The Sailing Stones of Racetrack Playa, United States. In a remote, dry lakebed in Death Valley, there are rocks that move on their own. Scattered across the cracked mud are heavy stones, some weighing hundreds of pounds, and trailing behind each one is a long groove carved into the clay, the track of a journey. Some have traveled hundreds of feet, and for nearly a century, no human ever saw one move. The tracks are undeniable and strange. They run in parallel, make sudden sharp turns, split apart, even reverse, as if the stones change their minds. Yet the playa is one of the flattest, stillest, driest places imaginable. There was no obvious force to push them. Theories piled up: hurricane winds, sheets of ice, even aliens. The problem was that the stones stubbornly refused to move whenever anyone was watching. The mystery was only cracked in the last decade, when researchers installed cameras and GPS units and waited. The answer was a delicate, rare combination. On winter nights, a thin layer of water freezes into panes of ice across the playa. As the sun rises and the ice breaks into floating sheets, a light breeze, sometimes only a few miles per hour, pushes the ice, and the ice shoves the stones across the slick mud, carving the tracks. It sounds simple now, but it required a chain of conditions so precise and fleeting that it eluded science for generations. The stones still sit out there today, waiting for the next perfect night to sail across the desert while no one is around to see it. Number 9. The Great Blue Hole, Belize. Off the coast of Belize, in the turquoise shallows of the Caribbean, there is a perfect dark circle in the sea. Surrounded by pale reef, the water suddenly plunges into a flawless ring of midnight blue, more than 1,000 feet across and over 400 feet deep. From the air, it looks like a bottomless pupil in the eye of the ocean. The perfection of the circle is what unsettles people, its edges almost geometrically round. But the Great Blue Hole was not always underwater. During the last ice age, when sea levels were far lower, this was a dry limestone cave on land. Rainwater dissolved the rock and hollowed out a vast cavern, until the roof collapsed inward, leaving a deep vertical shaft. When the ice age ended and the seas rose, the ocean flooded in and drowned it. The evidence is still frozen inside. Deep in the darkness, divers and submarines have found enormous stalactites, icicles of stone that can only form in open air, hanging hundreds of feet below the surface. They are proof this was once a dry cave, and they record the exact ancient sea levels at which the collapses happened. At the very bottom lies a layer of hydrogen sulfide, below which there is no oxygen and no life at all, a dead zone. And resting in that lightless graveyard are the remains of creatures that fell in and never came out. The Great Blue Hole is a time capsule of the Ice Age, a drowned cathedral of stone, and one of the most haunting formations in any ocean on Earth. Number 8. Salar de Uyuni, Bolivia. High in the Andes of Bolivia, at nearly 12,000 feet, lies the largest salt flat on Earth. Salar de Uyuni stretches over 4,000 square miles, a blinding white plain so flat that satellites use it to calibrate their instruments. From horizon to horizon, there is nothing but a cracked white crust arranged in enormous polygons. But in the rainy season, something happens that makes it one of the most surreal places in existence. When a thin layer of water covers the salt, the entire plain turns into the largest natural mirror on the planet. The still water perfectly reflects the sky, erasing the line between earth and heaven. People walking across it appear to float in the clouds. There is no up and no down. Salar de Uyuni is the ghost of an ancient lake. Tens of thousands of years ago, this region lay beneath a giant prehistoric body of water. As the climate changed and the lake evaporated, it left behind a colossal deposit of salt spread across the basin with astonishing flatness. The elevation varies by only about 3 feet across the entire plain. Beneath the crust lies another treasure, one of the world's largest reserves of lithium, the metal at the heart of modern batteries. What geologists still study is the strange perfection of the surface, how the salt organizes into such regular polygonal tiles, and how a plain this enormous can be this flat. Standing at its center under a reflected sky, it is easy to feel you have left the Earth entirely. Number 7. The Zhangye Danxia Rainbow Mountains, China. In Gansu Province, in northwestern China, there is a range of hills that looks as though a painter poured liquid rainbows across the land. The Zhangye Danxia landforms are striped in vivid bands of red, orange, yellow, green, and blue, layered at steep angles and rippling across the hills for miles. The colors are so saturated that first-time visitors assume the photographs are fake. They are not. The mountains are a book of deep time, and each colored band is a page. Over roughly 24 million years, layer upon layer of sandstone and mineral deposits piled up here. Different layers held different minerals. Iron oxides made the reds and oranges, others the yellows, greens, and blues, each laid down under slightly different ancient conditions. Then tectonic forces uplifted the land, tilting the once horizontal layers onto a steep angle. Erosion stripped away the softer, overlying rock and exposed the tilted, banded layers along the hillsides, revealing the full painted spectrum. What continues to fascinate geologists is the clarity and precision of the banding, and how reading these layers reveals a detailed record of tens of millions of years of shifting climate and chemistry. The colors also shift with the light, most vivid after rain, glowing at sunrise and sunset. It is one thing to know intellectually that these are mineral-stained rock layers tilted on their side. It is another to stand before a mountain range striped like a rainbow and grasp that it was painted not by an artist but by 24 million years of patient geology. Number 6. The Catatumbo Lightning, Venezuela. Where the Catatumbo River empties into a great lake in Venezuela, the sky is at war with itself almost every night of the year, for up to 260 nights annually, and for as many as 9 or 10 hours at a stretch, the heavens above this one spot erupt in near-continuous lightning. Bolt after bolt splits the sky, sometimes hundreds of flashes in a single hour. Sailors once navigated by it, using a storm that almost never stops. This is the everlasting storm. The concentration is what makes it a wonder. Lightning happens everywhere, but nowhere else does it gather so intensely, so predictably, over one small area, night after night, year after year. This single location is among the most lightning-struck places on the entire planet. Scientists have pieced together part of the recipe. Warm, moist air sweeps in from the Caribbean and collides with cold air spilling down from the surrounding Andes. Trapped in this basin, the warm air is forced violently upward, building towering storm clouds night after night. But the full explanation is still debated. Why this exact spot, with this exact intensity, remains only partly understood. Researchers have even asked whether methane rising from the surrounding marshlands helps charge the storms. The lightning has been so constant for so long that it appears on centuries-old maps and in ancient poems. To watch the Catatumbo lightning is to witness a storm that has raged in more or less the same place for longer than recorded history. A permanent fixture of the sky that science can describe but not fully explain. Number 5. Blood Falls, Antarctica. At the edge of the frozen world in Antarctica, a glacier bleeds. From a crack in the pure white ice of the Taylor Glacier, a stream of deep, rust-red liquid pours out and stains the ice like an open wound. Early explorers who found it in 1911 were horrified. It looked, quite literally, like blood spilling from the heart of the continent. For over 100 years, its true nature was a puzzle. The first guess was red algae. That was wrong. The real answer took decades to uncover, and it is far stranger. Beneath the glacier lies a lake of ancient saltwater, sealed off from the world for well over 1 million years. No light, no oxygen, trapped under thousands of feet of ice and extremely rich in iron. When this brine finds a fracture and seeps into the Antarctic air, the iron instantly reacts with oxygen and rusts, turning the water the color of dried blood. But the deeper mystery lives in the lake itself. Scientists have discovered that this buried, lightless, oxygen-free reservoir is not dead. It is home to microbes that have survived in total isolation for over 1 million years. metabolizing iron and sulfur in conditions that should be lethal. Researchers study them precisely because they may resemble the kind of life that could exist beneath the ice of distant moons like Europa or Enceladus, a river of ancient blood, feeding creatures that have not seen the sun since before humans existed, flowing out of the coldest desert on Earth. Blood Falls is not just a geological wonder, it is a window into how life might survive on other worlds. Number 4. The Cave of the Crystals, Mexico. 1,000 feet beneath a mountain in Chihuahua, Mexico, lies a chamber that looks like the throne room of an ice king. Except nothing here is ice, and the temperature is a lethal furnace. The Cave of the Crystals, discovered by miners in the year 2000, holds the largest natural crystals ever found on Earth. Beams of translucent gypsum, some over 36 feet long and weighing dozens of tons, crisscross the cavern like fallen pillars of glass. A human standing beside one is utterly dwarfed. For a long time, it was a genuine mystery how any crystal could grow so large. The answer lies in an extraordinary, rare set of conditions. For hundreds of thousands of years, this chamber was flooded with mineral-rich water heated by the magma below to a nearly perfect and stable temperature, hovering right around 136 degrees Fahrenheit. At that precise point, dissolved minerals slowly deposited onto the crystals without ever dissolving them back. Held at that knife's-edge balance for hundreds of thousands of years, the crystals grew to monstrous size. But that same heat makes the cave one of the deadliest places on the planet. Inside, the air sits near 122 degrees with almost total humidity, conditions that can kill an unprotected human in well under an hour, as the body loses its ability to cool itself and fluid condenses inside the lungs. Explorers can only enter for minutes at a time, wearing suits packed with ice. The Cave of the Crystals is a wonder that actively resists being seen, a treasure chamber that will cook anyone who lingers too long inside it. Number 3. Moville Cave, Romania. In southeastern Romania, near the Black Sea, there is a cave sealed off from the surface world for over 5 million years, and inside it, life found a way. Moville Cave was discovered by accident in 1986 when workers broke into a chamber no light had touched since long before the first humans walked the Earth. What they found overturned assumptions about what life needs to survive. The air inside is poison. It holds almost no oxygen, less than half the level of open air, and is thick with toxic hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide, a mixture that would swiftly kill an unprotected human. It is pitch black, sealed under impermeable clay for millions of years. By every conventional expectation, it should be a dead, empty void. Instead, it teems with life. Scientists have found dozens of species inside. Spiders, scorpion-like creatures, leeches, insects, most of which exist nowhere else on Earth. And here is the revelation that stunned biologists. This entire ecosystem survives with no input from the sun at all. On the surface, nearly all life depends on sunlight. In Moville Cave, the food chain is built instead on microbes that draw energy from chemistry, from the sulfur in the water and air, in a process called chemosynthesis. An entire self-contained world, cut off for 5 million years, running on chemistry instead of sunlight, populated by creatures found nowhere else. Moville Cave forced scientists to expand their very definition of where life can exist, and it is guarded like a treasure, entered by only a handful of researchers, because the smallest contamination could destroy it. Number 2. The Yonaguni Monument, Japan. Off the coast of the small Japanese island of Yonaguni, divers in 1986 found something on the seafloor that has divided scientists ever since. Beneath the waves, at a depth of around 80 feet, lies a vast formation of stone with flat terraces, sharp, straight edges, right angles, and what appear to be enormous steps and platforms. To many eyes, it looks like the ruins of a sunken temple. It is called the Yonaguni Monument, and no one can fully agree on what it is. The debate cuts to a profound question. One camp argues the monument is entirely natural. The sandstone here fractures along straight, parallel planes, and ordinary geology can produce the clean edges and right angles that look so artificial to us. Sandstone genuinely does break in blocky ways, and nature is capable of surprising geometry. The other camp is not convinced. They point to features that seem too deliberate. What look like carved steps, straight trenches, a possible archway, and if any part of it were shaped by human hands, the implications would be staggering. Because this land was last above water at the end of the last ice age, more than 10,000 years ago. That would make it far older than the pyramids, rewriting the timeline of human civilization. Decades of study have not settled it. Most mainstream geologists lean toward a natural origin. A determined minority insist human hands worked it long ago. What is undeniable is that the Yonaguni Monument sits at the exact boundary between geology and archaeology. A place where science genuinely cannot yet say whether we are looking at the work of the earth, of a lost people, or both. Number 1. Mount Roraima, Venezuela. In the remote highlands where Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana meet, a mountain rises out of the jungle that looks like it belongs to another planet. And in a sense, it does. Mount Roraima is a tepui, a tabletop mountain. Its vertical cliff walls climbing nearly 1,300 feet straight up on every side to a vast, flat summit that floats almost perpetually in the clouds. For most of human history, it was considered unclimbable, an island in the sky, and what lives on top exists almost nowhere else in the world. Roraima is one of the oldest exposed landscapes on Earth. The rock that forms it was laid down around 2 billion years ago, a span of time nearly impossible to hold in the mind. Once this sandstone was part of an immense plateau. Over the eons, almost all of it eroded away, leaving only these isolated tabletop mountains standing like the last towers of a vanished world. Because the summit has been cut off for millions of years, evolution up there went its own way. The plateau is home to unique plants and animals found nowhere else, including carnivorous plants that trap insects to survive in the nutrient-starved soil, and small black frogs so ancient they cannot swim and instead crawl across the rock. Waterfalls pour off the edges and dissolve into mist before they reach the ground far below. Of all the wonders on this list, Roraima is perhaps the closest thing we have to a genuinely separate world. A fragment of primordial Earth, 2 billion years old, held up in the clouds, where life took a path no other place on the planet ever followed. For most of us, the ground beneath our feet feels ordinary, solid, known. But every place on this list began as ordinary ground, until something, time, water, fire, pressure, or life itself, reshaped it into something the human mind struggles to accept. We have crossed a desert with an eye that can only be seen from space, floated across a mirror made of salt, stood beneath crystals the size of trees, and climbed a mountain 2 billion years old that floats in the clouds. What unites all 15 of these places is not that science has failed. It is that the Earth is still, after all our mapping and measuring, capable of humbling us. Some of these mysteries have been partly solved. Others remain genuinely open, argued over by the smartest people alive. And a few may never be fully explained at all. The deeper we dig, the stranger the planet becomes. If you made it all the way to number 1, you are exactly the kind of curious mind this channel was made for. Tell me down in the comments which of these 15 wonders unsettled you the most, and which one you would risk everything to see with your own eyes. Take care and keep looking at the strange and beautiful world around you.